Hello, this is Ina, and today I would like to share with you my latest art journal, which I have entitled Forget Me Not Stories. Like my earlier book, it is inspired by the Forget Me Not flower, a timeless symbol of remembrance. I have created this journal as a collection of beautiful stories whispered by the unique old papers, textiles, photographs, and laces gathered within its pages. At the same time, it has been designed as a treasure box for its future owners' own memories, stories, and keepsakes to be cherished for years to come. For the cover, I have used a luxurious 19th century souvenir booklet, apparently in leather, as far as I can judge, once gifted to the clients of the Parisian department store Le Bon Marché. This little souvenir booklet is a rare survivor from one of the most enchanting chapters of Parisian history, when Aristide Boussicot founded the first department store, a dazzling world of silks, lace, fashion, and the pleasures of discovery. I particularly like the soft harmony of the faded blue-gray cover and the discreet shimmering of the gilded details. The back cover carries a gold-stamped allegorical figure crowned with the word loyauté, loyalty in French, together with the signature of Aristide Boussicot. A souvenir booklet given to reward loyalty became a surprisingly fitting vessel for a journal devoted to memory, attachment, and the things we choose not to forget. Here you can also see a tiny brass flower that I have added. Firstly, well, because there was a small hole in the original cover that I wanted to hide, and secondly, because I find that this flower simply belongs here. This is an antique stationary brass fastener. The spine is covered with this gorgeous vintage French upholstery velvet from the collection Amélie Prévost. Its soft blue flowers reminded me a lot of forget-me-nots, and they seemed destined to become a part of this story. For the closure, I have used a repurposed antique military gold braid. The journal consists of 3 signatures and around 72-74 pages, all sewn onto a hidden spine construction that allows the journal to open beautifully flat. As the original souvenir booklet was rather delicate, I reinforced the cover with a black chipboard for additional stability and strength. And I have finished the edges with gold wax, which echoes the original gilding. So, let's have a look inside. Here I have added a panel of antique upholstery fabric adorned with delicate pink roses and a soft blue ribbon. And the first page of the journal is an aged blue page from a vintage accounting book. On it, I created a pocket from antique medical gauze, embellished with a stunning piece of antique blue beaded embroidery. I love the contrast between the humble, utilitarian nature of the gauze and the delicate beauty of the beadwork. While the gauze was originally intended to protect and heal, here it feels almost like a delicate wrapping for something precious, preserving memories and keepsakes with tenderness and care. I have tucked into the pocket this gorgeous embossed antique postcard featuring a cherub and bearing the words, ne m'oubliez pas, forget me not. This postcard is wonderfully tactile, with its raised details, soft colors, and delicate textile bow. On the reverse, it carries a handwritten message, Toutes mes amitiés, with my warmest regards. And it was once sent from Paris, as I can see from the post stamp in 1903. For the future owner of this journal, may this little cherub be a gentle guardian of your most cherished memories. Here I have folded the accounting book page and attached it with an old rusty paper clip. I loved the faded blue patina of the paper and the little traces left behind by old staples, so I collaged some of those fragments onto the flap. Behind there is a removable journaling card featuring a study for the Love Song by Edward Burne-Jones. I have embellished it with a tiny antique lace fragment resembling a delicate wing surrounded by small forget-me-not flowers. The card is tucked behind a fragment of an antique leather book cover and set against antique wallpaper. One of the details that drew me to this wallpaper was the floral pattern, reminding me of forget-me-nots. Behind the card, there is a shallow pocket containing a hand-drawn map on tracing paper. And on the right, there is a distressed and ink-stained antique school notebook page. I find that there is a certain soothing harmony in the color palette of this spread, combining different shades of warm sepia and soft blue and gray. Here I have added a small pocket that I covered with soft gray silk velvet. Tucked inside, there is a fragment from an antique newspaper featuring a touching image of a mother and her children, one of those everyday scenes that seem to carry memories of another time. I have also created a journaling tag using a piece of antique wallpaper in muted green-gray tones with delicate touches of gold. The little flowers scattered across the pattern look like forget-me-nots. And I have added an old striped fabric ribbon to serve as a pull. You know what? I have just realized that the floral wallpaper on the journaling tag seems to come from the very room depicted in the photograph. I am also very fond of a subtle echo between the stripes on the tag ribbon and the sofa upholstery on the photo. Behind, there is a generous space for journaling. Also, one of my favorite hidden details is this tiny silver embossed angel on the reverse of the tag. It is easy to miss, but I love the elegance and quiet symbolism it brings to the spread. Here you can see the other part of the antique school notebook page. I like a lot how the ink stains have turned out here. And on the right, this is the back of a vintage telegram. I just softly stenciled some floral motifs onto the paper and left visible the printed words "à déchirer," to tear off. Here we can see the front side of the telegram. The message is very ordinary. simply a confirmation that a payment had been made on a Saturday. Opposite, I covered the entire page with a piece of antique fabric featuring a cherub surrounded by birds and delicate flowers. Here on the left, there is a part of a vintage envelope postmarked in 1948. I stitched it to the page only along two sides, allowing the antique wallpaper beneath to remain partially visible through the window and around the edges. The pocket can still hold additional treasures, but I rather enjoy seeing the wallpaper peek through as it is. On the opposite page, a faded blue paper supports a photograph dated 1913 and showing a group of ladies outdoors. I love its deep sepia aging hue. I have attached it with a small scrap of fabric salvaged from an antique quilt, and behind the photograph there is a blank piece of antique paper left available for journaling. On the left, there is a fragment from an antique music album cover. I was particularly drawn to its elegant ornamental details and the beautiful aging of the paper. On the opposite page, I printed a portrait of a young woman from my collection of antique photos onto an antique ledger page that I coffee stained. What strikes me is her gaze. It seems inward looking, as if she has just paused in the middle of a thought. There is nothing theatrical or coquettish about her expression. This photo evokes to me calm dignity and restraint, thoughtfulness, and I do not know, a certain independence. I have also attached to the page with an antique hat pin a fragment of pale blue silk marked by time. I love how it embodies softness, tenderness, touch, and perhaps even vulnerability. By securing it here with a pin, I wanted it to become, for the person who will one day use this journal, a delicate reminder of something precious. This spread is minimalist and yet extraordinary tactile. I have attached here a fragment from a gorgeous antique lace collar. Alongside it, I added a fragment of a 19th century lady's silk corset in a deep midnight blue. The tiny pleats make me imagine the hands that made them, repaired them, wore them, and cared for them over a century ago. As you can see, the corset fragment is not permanently attached and can be removed. I thought it would make a lovely bookmark for the future owner of the journal. Here I combined two different antique ledger pages. The one to the left is from the 1912 ledger that we have just seen before, and the page to the right comes from another antique ledger that I left blank so that it can be used for journaling. Between the pages, I have created two vertical shallow pockets. One is made from remnants of an old book binding, while the other incorporates a fragment of the antique blue music book cover that appears early in this journal, together with a small scrap of fabric salvaged from an 18th century quilt. Tucked inside there are several pieces of ephemera that I found especially touching. There is an original photograph of a garden or park that was taken in the summer of 1936, accompanied by a delicate handwritten love letter on wonderfully thin paper. On the opposite side is a charming postcard sent in 1913, featuring a young boy carrying baskets filled with flowers, including forget-me-nots. I have also included a blank page from a 19th century notebook distributed to loyal customers of the Parisian department store Au Printemps. Here I created a spread around an antique postcard featuring a girl wearing a delicate flower crown. The tiny blue flowers immediately reminded me of forget-me-nots, so she seemed perfectly at home in this journal. On the left, I have created a tuck spot using a fragment of antique lace in soft blush pink shade. Do you see small forget-me-not flowers here, or am I just imagining forget-me-nots everywhere? Behind the lace, the ledger page bears a beautiful circular rust mark. Tucked inside, there is a piece of gray-blue paper salvaged from an antique photo album. Originally, it was used behind photographs to strengthen and protect them. I stitched to it an antique promotional coupon from a department store sale, transforming it into a removable journaling card. You know what I have just noticed? This lace actually looks very similar to the one around the girl's shoulders. For a moment, it feels as though a piece of her garment has slipped out of the photograph and into the page. Here we discover the reverse side of the postcard and a shallow pocket made from the beautifully aged blue accounting paper. Tucked inside is a fragment of antique wallpaper with delicate blue flowers, another quiet reminder of the forget-me-not motif that weaves its way through this journal. It can be used as a journaling card or as a bookmark. On the right, another part of the 1930s telegram sent from Paris. The reverse side of the telegram revealing traces of its journey. To the right, a fragment of an antique school notebook page with a fussy cut of a single forget-me-not stem. The page folds upward to create a tuck spot, and I just added a tiny fragment of dusty blue paper along the fold, a small echo of the flower above. Here, another stained page from the antique school notebook continues the story. To the right, a folded fragment of the vintage accounting book cover. The background beneath is covered with a delicate floral gift wrapping paper. Here too, I can see small forget-me-nots. Tucked here is an antique school notebook cover and a lovely piece of antique white embroidery. Here to the left, you can see a luxurious piece of antique embroidered tulle adorned with tiny pearls and gold sequins. It was salvaged from an old dress. I have stitched it to the blue vintage accounting book cover that we have seen before. On the page to the right, I have included a reproduction of Arthur Hughes' painting Forget-Me-Not, printed onto an antique ledger page and further distressed. Between the two appears a glimpse of antique floral upholstery fabric used as the hidden spine for the signatures. This painting is symbolic and deeply emotional. Hughes described it in a letter to his daughter while he was still painting it. He wrote that the picture would show a young girl kneeling before a window with forget-me-nots in her hand and the last light of evening. I created this spread simply following my intuition. Now, when I look at this dusty, grungy, blue accounting book cover, veiled by this extraordinary piece of shimmering antique embroidery, it makes me think of the last evening light the girl is gazing at. To me, it also feels like a delicate sun ray of hope, bringing warmth and beauty into an ordinary gray day. And this spread brings us into a world of elegance, fashion, and dance. I have folded the painting fragment and you can still see its narrow strip with its deep dark colors here. I embellished this tuck spot with a scrap from an antique furniture catalog featuring a beautiful bronze ornament. There is also an authentic antique button mode de Paris or Parisian fashion, and I do not know if you can see it well, a strand of antique gold thread. Here I will show you the bobbin it comes from. Tucked into the pocket is a photograph of dancing couples at a Paris ball, taken by the famous French photographer Robert Doisneau, my favorite photographer of all time. This is actually a fragment from a vintage book, and on its reverse there is another of his beautiful photographs. Here I will show you the book from which I have taken this fragment. Here there is a fragment from an antique photograph album page in lovely muted blue, gray, and green tones, adorned with an elegant floral pattern. I love how its foliage echoes the bronze leaves here. And in the background you can still see the ledger page from the 1890s on which I printed the painting image. This ledger once belonged to a French tailor who made garments for noble families in La Rochelle during the 19th century. At the top of the page, the handwritten name of one of those families is still visible. The page to the right comes from an antique handwritten notebook filled with poems. I simply veiled it with a piece of delicate antique tulle, allowing the graceful script to remain just visible beneath. This spread feels to me like a quiet pause after the excitement of a Parisian ball, like a morning afterwards. On the left is the continuation of the handwritten poem, In the upper corner, I added a delicate impression of an antique lace flower. Rather than using the lace itself, here I simply transferred its pattern onto tissue paper, cut it out, and let it gently fade into the page. On the opposite page, I created a tuck spot by stitching a small vintage photograph along just one edge. I love its soft, slightly blurred appearance. It feels less like a photograph and more like a distant memory of a quiet street. Tucked behind is an original French letter dated 1866, and the background page was once a vintage sewing pattern. It is almost blank, marked only by a few delicate construction lines, and this makes it a lovely place for journaling.